I really should stop making these reviews before I go to bed, because that's pretty much the only time I make these videos anymore. This is a quick video, it's not going to be any long analysis or anything. Tomorrow is the day here in Sweden when Batman Arkham City comes out, and a game that I am very excited for. In fact, since Mass Effect 3 got pulled back until next year, it's pretty much between this game and probably Uncharted 3. Skyrim seems to be pretty damn awesome, but I still think, even though I will probably love that game, it will probably not be the kind of game that will end up being my personal favorite. And considering that it was between Batman Arkham Asylum and Uncharted 2 years ago, it would be fitting if those two games duke it out for my Game of the Year this year. Although I feel a lot less prepared this year, considering that I had dramatically decreased my amount of gaming. I used to buy almost every single game that was, like, you know, in any caliber at all. I guess I would like to say that the old me would have bought a game like Shadow of the Damned the day it came out. But these days, I don't have the money or really the time. I focus more on movies because that's what I eventually really want to work with. But, hey, still love the games a lot. And I have my franchises I need to pick up, even though I kind of feel like I'm stressing with the amount of time I can spend gaming. I wish I had more hours in the day, don't we all? Just so I could play video games and not feel bad about it. Which brings us to today's subject, a game which I was very, you know, like, torn between if I should buy or not. Capcom has been making a very bad name for themselves with this whole making us buy new characters, especially if you look at their fighting games. First, there was Street Fighter 4, then Super Street Fighter 4, then there was, I don't even remember, it was like it's the arcade, like Ultimate Street Fighter 4 Arcade. I don't even remember what the full name of that friggin' thing is. I don't even remember the name of all the different Street Fighter 2 games out there either, so I guess it's fitting. And now there's Ultimate Marvel vs. Capcom 3, like how they keep on adding characters and not releasing them as DLC, but making you buy the full game. And yes, I am aware that you could buy the last Street Fighter 4 edition as an update for Super Street Fighter, if I'm not completely mistaken. That's not really the point. The point is that it's a model that seems to have expanded outside of the fighting game genre, which brings us to the game I think everyone can guess I mean, you've already seen the name of the video, but you could probably guess if you haven't seen which game I'm talking about. I'm talking about Dead Rising 2, off the record. Whoa. I was very torn about buying this game. It's $40 towards a game that I've already played, which basically just takes one thing, at least from what I've understood. It takes Frank West and puts him in Chuck Green's shoes in Dead Rising 2. And I didn't really want to pay that much money for that for a game I already played, and didn't really enjoy all that much, honestly. Then again, when I was thinking back, I knew there were some frustrations about Dead Rising 2 that were definitely, like, there were basically two big problems with Dead Rising 2. First of all was that there were the psychopaths and some other parts of the game were overly tough to the point where I just didn't want to keep on playing. And then there was the fact that the story was not engaging. The first game had points where it was really frustrating, but it didn't matter because Frank West's story was so interesting and so compelling, I wanted to keep going with it. And it felt like Dead Rising 2 didn't have that at all, even though it tried to have a more, like, compelling story. Frank West's story in the original was to get a fucking scoop on some zombie outbreak. Dead Rising 2 one-ups that by trying to put it into, like, oh, it's this motorcycle riding tough guy, but his daughter's infected with the zombie disease, and all he wants is to save her. And that actually made me love Chuck Green. The whole like child thing. He's not doing this for himself. He's doing it for his child. Whereas Frank West's entire thing was that he did it for just himself. That's all he cared about. Number one. And yet, from the second I saw Chuck Greed, before I even really knew his backstory, I knew that I wanted Frank. Dead Rising was Frank, and did not seem like Capcom or like the new studio Blue Castle Games did not understand that that was what it was. That was what you needed. You needed Frank West because he was what made the first game fun. And then Dead Rising 2 came out, and it was good. You could combine new weapons. You had a great new playground to play around in. It was a great game. It had some mechanics that should have been updated. It felt like dated with both its graphics and in its ways gameplay wise as well. But it was a good game. Basically, the best part about it was they made saving survivors a lot easier by having the zombies not attack the survivors as much. They did not up the survivors' AI as much as just make the zombies even, like, if not even dumber, just make them less, like, willing to go after the survivors you were trying to save, which really helped, because that was by far the most frustrating part about the first game. But, as I've already said, the one thing the game fucked up was it made the psychopaths you had to fight incredibly horrible to beat. I remember especially Slappy, like a guy like a mascot for a kid clothing company in the Palisades Mall. He has, I think, flamethrowers and like flame grenades that he throws at you, lobs at you in the mall. And I remember the first time I beat him by cheating. I cheated. I got him so that he could not throw and shoot at me from where he was. He was and I got into the gun store, like the rifle shop they have in that mall, and I just, like, you know, as soon as he came into my sights, I shot him in the head and I ducked out of the way, and he would go away, come back, but not be able to actually throw anything in at me because I was hiding behind the counter, and I just kept shooting him for about like half an hour until he died. And I felt like that's not fun. And I felt like almost every single fucking psychopath was like that, where I either had to buck the system or try several times, and it just wasn't fun. Dead Rising 2, off the record, has this problem too, but granted, I can't really say that they haven't fixed anything. I don't really know, because just because I knew this was Dead Rising 2 with Frank West, I played the game for about, if you don't know, Dead Rising is like a game that is based on you getting, it has a leveling system up to level 50. So you complete tasks, you save survivors, beat psychopaths, kill zombies, complete missions, and you gain experience points, or PP as it's called here, which results in you gaining levels, you get more health, more item space, and new abilities for Frank. And basically what I realized right here was I played this game for about an hour and a half, 2 hours, and then all your experience, like, it carries over. So I reset the game after about 2 hours, and I gained about, I think, like 5 to 10 levels, something, and I restarted the game with these levels so I could just immediately go back in through the game, the first couple of levels, and regain, so I'd get a little more extra levels, which I knew would help me get through some of the harder parts at the beginning of the game. So basically, I can't really even say if this game is easier or harder, if they fixed anything, because I myself went in assuming they hadn't, and I didn't really have as many frustrating parts with this game. In fact, the only time I swore at this game was today, when I had a 6.5-hour marathon trying to beat it just so I wouldn't feel stressed when Batman came out, where in the last 2 hours, like at the end game, the overtime mode, and now only people that have played Dead Rising before know what I'm talking about, it really got frustrated because it got to the point where, you know, where a game is not trying to be creative in the way, making it challenging, it just throws as many enemies as possible at you, just to make it like, oh, we have 50,000 fucking zombies and we're throwing them all at you, fuck you. And it just got tedious and annoying, especially considering the fact that I just wanted to beat the game at that point. But getting ahead of myself, I'm not going to spoil anything. This is not a spoiler review. Or I think I will probably end up spoiling things, but I will get everything out of the way before I do that. So yeah, those are the pros and cons. The pros and cons are pretty much the same for everything in this game. There are some new items, like it can be combined, Frank has some abilities that Chuck did not have. And also, you know, stuff like I think Chuck didn't have a single ability at the beginning of the game. Frank can at least do his freaking Frank West kick right from the start, just jump kick and kick zombies in the face. A lot of the dialogue is recycled because, well, they still have the basic game there, but they have taken all the... It feels like all the actors and characters that really matter do have new lines of dialogue, so they have not just said, like, okay, we're just going to put Frank in there and try to make situations work. They actually do have new dialogue scenes with Rebecca, with Sullivan, with Stacy. So everyone does have new dialogue for this game. And, well... I think, like, literally everything it boils down to, at least when it comes to the overall, like, mode of the game, the story mode, because the best, like, addition to this game is that there is a sandbox mode. And the sandbox mode is amazingly good. Maybe not because of it's not intricate or anything, but it's fun to know that you finally have the option to, if you just want to fuck around in the world, that you can just drop yourself into the world and just fuck around. In fact, it even starts out with a cutscene where Frank, like, is getting flown in over the friggin' Fortune City, and the helicopter pilot asks him, "Hey, you're that Frank West guy. You here to cover a scoop or something?" And he's all like, Frank West, this cheekiness is like, "No, no way, man. This is my vacation!" And he just jumps out and, like, freeze frames on him, like, yeah, it's like sandbox mode. And I'm like, that's amazing. That encapsulates everything I love about Frank. Even though it's not even canon or in any way makes any sense, it's just hilarious the attitude he brings. Chuck never had any fun. He was a grouch through the entire thing, and granted the game gave him a reason story-wise to be a grump. But I didn't want a grump. I wanted Frank West. And this game gives me Frank. The sandbox mode is great also if you want to find items. It's kind of annoying when you know, for example, that you want a specific item. Like for me, for example, I had a Google list of all the items I wanted to be able to combine, like new items that were not in the original Dead Rising 2. And when you don't know where you get the components for those items, it can be a little frustrating when you're on a timer. So it was fun to be able to jump into the sandbox mode and just explore the new environments, because there is a new environment called Uranus Zone, which is a space-themed theme park, which is pretty fun to spend time in. There are a few new boss fights, like a few new psychopaths. One in particular, which I might spoil when I get past just saying how awesome this game is, because I really like this game. I'm gonna say right away, it pains me to say that I like this game a lot, and in some other ways not at all, not very much at all. But I'll get to that. Anyway, sandbox mode is really, really great. It's fun. Again, you get to explore you can explore everything in your own time, and best part of all your kills and stuff like that. Experience points gained in the sandbox mode. It can be a little confusing figuring out that you have 3 save files you can use, and you have to make sure that if you really want all your fucking experience points in the sandbox mode that you acquire to go over into the right save file, you have to make sure that you have your sandbox mode save file in line with your last save file from the campaign. Otherwise, all the experience points that you gain might go into another save file that you've already surpassed, because I always have 2 or 3 save files in case I fuck up, especially since Dead Rising is based on time limits and in chronology, which means that if you fuck up and you have too short a time to get a specific item you might need for a mission or something like that, you might be screwed completely. So it's always good to have several save files, and which means that if you saved it in the wrong file, all the points you have gained in sandbox mode are basically just thrown away, because they end up on a save file that you've already surpassed. So unless you're willing to take all those points and then replay what you've played since that save file, you've just wasted your time, except maybe for having fun and discovering new stuff. Well, I guess except for the sandbox mode and some new items and one particularly funny psychopath, I guess the thing it just boils down to is the story. The story, as I said, is pretty much similar. There are some twists that are different. There are some characters that act different. And I honestly, this is where it all turns out great for me. If I just have to summarize this game for everyone out there, if you liked Dead Rising 2 but felt something was missing, buy Off the Record. If you never played Dead Rising 2, buy Off the Record. If you did not like Dead Rising 2 and don't want to play anymore, then of course this game is not for you. But honestly, the saddest part about this game is that this is what Dead Rising 2 should have been from the start. Like, I don't like that this is off the record. I hope that Capcom wises up and actually make this the official Dead Rising 2 somehow. It just feels like that would be the best way to make it happen. It just feels like they have everything in place. This story is more interesting. Frank has better chemistry with some of the characters, and because he's funny, everything just works out so perfectly. As I said, it all just boils down to attitude, pretty much. This isn't really spoiling anything, but just saying, for example, Rebecca Chang, who is a character, she's a journalist in Dead Rising 2. She's obviously in this game too, because, well, the narrative would probably not work without her. But the thing is, she was sort of like flirtatious towards Chuck in Dead Rising 2, but she was kind of a bitch as well. And her characteristics are intact here. But the funny thing is that she becomes incredibly likable in this game. She becomes like a character, like in the original, she was sexy. She's one of the most beautiful, like, designed video game characters ever. She's fucking beautiful. But this game, since the thing is, Chuck was the frigging grumpy man that he was, you never really got a chance to like her because you never really liked him either. I didn't really like anyone. I guess I liked Chuck sort of because I saw his problem, and I liked his daughter because she was cute enough, but except for that, I didn't really care about anyone. I already knew Frank when I came into this game, and I knew right away. I was waiting. Like, I wonder what's going to happen when he meets Rebecca Chang, because that's got to be fucking funny. Because she even had some of his... like, she was the spiritual successor to Frank. You could tell. She even has, like, one of Frank's words that he used to say a lot in the original Dead Rising, where he took pictures, which was fantastic. He says that once, and it's like she says it a couple of times more in this campaign, I think. She says it at least the once when she says it in the original Dead Rising 2. Just, these characters play off each other because they're on the same field. She's a journalist, he's a photojournalist. She just starts off by once again saying, "Oh, you used to be one of my idols," and just like says how he's a has-been, and he just immediately retorts. They have chemistry, which Chuck never really had with anyone in the game. And just their relationship makes the whole thing so goddamn awesome. I love it. So, I just hope that and again, these events do not play out in the same way as in Dead Rising 2. And honestly, I'm a lot more happy with the way these things turn out, even though in a lot of ways they do become more ridiculously insane than in Dead Rising 2, and that's saying a lot. I kind of feel like I wish that this is what Capcom decides. I know that there will be things they probably have to like fix and tamper with, but I hope that Capcom realizes that we wanted Frank all along. I hope that they somehow manage to maybe even doctor like a story that somehow contains both versions, writing in certain things, fixing some things, because there are things that are sad about both that I kind of wish. Basically, writing Chuck Green out of the entire thing would be a disservice to his character, even though I didn't really like him. And there are other things in this version that I think would be a whole lot better for what you could do with a sequel. I mean, I know that there are expansions for Dead Rising 2 that expand that story and include Frank, but I still feel like the story that's told here sets up a better future for the franchise than, say, Dead Rising Case West did, even though that somehow tried to throw in Isabella Keys and all weird shit. It didn't explain anything. It just set up some weird thing they could use for a sequel, and they could very well use the exact same thing here, because guess what? Dead Rising Off the Record does not necessarily mean that Dead Rising Case West never happened. if they just fix a few things here and there and just somehow write that into the game or something, make a comic, make anything where you just make sure, like, just show off things that, like, this is canon, this is not canon. We pick things from this and shove them into one story. I wouldn't care. I know a lot of people probably complain about the fact that you mixed and matched stories from different games. I don't care, as long as you doctored a story that would include both characters and make it feel a whole lot better than it would if you just took one of these two games. But if I had to choose, again, I'd say I'd want Dead Rising 2, off the record, to be the real Dead Rising 2, because that story's a lot more interesting with a lot more compelling characters. I guess that's really all I have to say. I already told you, if you like Dead Rising 2 but felt something is missing, then buy Dead Rising 2 off the record. If not right away, buy it when it goes down in price or when it becomes available on demand on the Xbox or PS3, because it is a great game. It gives you more Dead Rising-ness for your buck, and it has a story which is retreading, but does have different aspects towards the end, and a character that is a lot more fun to hang around, even when he's just saying random stuff during the game. Plus, if you beat the game and start over, and I'm not really spoiling anything by saying, you get Proto Man's Proto Buster, and it's not at all as good as Mega Man's from the original Dead Rising, but hey, it's a fun bonus. That's it. I would give the game I'd have to give the game 7 out of 10, probably. That's probably even being generous. Let's put it like this, if Dead Rising 2 did not exist, this game would probably be an 8, maybe even a 9, because it's less frustrating than the original Dead Rising 2, and therefore it is a better game. But because Dead Rising 2 exists, and this game just feels like it's retreading the same ground, I have to give it a 7 based on the fact that it's almost the same game with some new additions, especially the sandbox mode, but it's still the game I wanted more, which means that it's a 7, maybe even an 8 on my own personal level, but it should probably be more like a 7 leaning towards a 6 if I was a professional reviewer. So yeah, that's it. And I'm going to spoil some stuff after this, so you probably want to stop this video if you don't want to know. I'll wait. Everyone been able to turn off their computers? Good. I just want to talk about some of the changes in this game that I really like. Like, the biggest change, of course, is basically I just want to talk a little bit about the ending, which is, the one thing that bothered me about Dead Rising 2 was that the way Rebecca Chang was offed. Rebecca Chang's character was my favorite in the entire game, even though she was a snooty bitch towards Chuck, because at least she had a flair to her. She was confident in her abilities, and the way she was off, which was that Sullivan, like the Fortune City security guard, just shot her clean in the head, which I really didn't like. And then you just had to save your daughter from TK. It was a mess. The ending of the game left me with nothing. It had no implication of any bigger, grander story. It just ended, and they're like, oh, we're going to tell the rest of the story in downloadable content, and that felt like crap. Again, Dead Rising 2 alludes to it alludes to a bigger plan. It doesn't really end with just everything being resolved perfectly. It ends with everyone going on their merry way, but it ends a whole lot better by having at least a bigger plan being like obvious somewhere in the distance. The thing I was hoping for here, as you might have heard from the story, like just what I told you about Frank and Rebecca, was I wanted Frank and Rebecca, because they flirt to the point where they actually honestly start to care about each other. Like, there are points where Rebecca is telling Frank, be careful, and Frank is saying the exact same thing to her, because they legitimately care about each other. And I cared about them both. I like Rebecca from the start, and I love Frank, so I just felt like these two are a match made in heaven. Why does she have to die? So when it came to the final point, like when everything's supposed to just like fall into place, boy was I fucking thrilled when Stacy pulled out the gun and shot Rebecca and Sullivan. I was a little sad at first because, oh, god damn it, they killed Rebecca again, but and they killed Sullivan too. But then I realized right after that Rebecca's death was different. Her body was still there in the room, and she wasn't shot straight in the head. So they changed something, and of course then once you take down Stacy, who you basically fight on a big a giant metal spider. I actually did, like, I heard the Cartman voice in my head when she, like, jumps up on her big robot thing that Phenotrans has built for her. And she's like, oh, we built this prepared. We knew you'd come snooping around. And I'm like, you built a giant metal spider? And I'm like, what is this Wild Wild West? Again, it's completely crazy. Wild Wild West, that actually fits with Frank. Anyway, it's completely crazy, but I don't care. I still think this game should be the official sequel. But after you fight her, you have to fight TK again, just like in the original. But instead of having Stacy and Katie be the people you have to save Rebecca. And boy, I just love the fact that this game pretty much just ends with Frank and Rebecca going into the sunset together. And that was so perfect. This game's story gave me everything I wish Dead Rising 2 had been. Dead Rising 2 had a great, pole, like it would say, just like a tent pole to envelop its story in, but it didn't really use everything it had because Chuck was so invested in his one thing. He kind of didn't want to be invested in anything else. He just wanted to save Katie and get the fuck out of Fortune City. Frank is interested in finding the truth, granted for his own personal satisfaction and needs, but it's still fun to have a hero that wants to know the big picture, not maybe for Chuck's reason, which are personal revenge or just because it endangers the people he loves, but just because Frank and Rebecca are both just truth seekers. I hope that they make Rebecca live. In fact, I am begging Capcom to make it so Rebecca Chang survived Fortune City and she ends up with Frank, because they are perfect for each other. And in a sequel, I could totally see Chuck Green being I wouldn't have been pissed off about Chuck Green being the main character in Dead Rising 2 had they gone the Metal Gear Solid route and put Frank West in this case in as a very important secondary character. Which of course they didn't. Frank West is all but absent, mentioned a couple of times, and then put in Dead Rising 2 Case West. I almost feel like Dead Rising 3 would be good if you had some sort of split where you could actually play as both characters, where your levels, of course, just directly turned over into the character the character you're playing as, or you could choose one of the two and experience two different stories with slightly varied things depending on which character you chose. I guess that's all I really wanted to say. I think the story in this game is better simply because Rebecca and Frank have chemistry, whereas Chuck didn't have chemistry with anyone. I think that's really it. There isn't really a whole lot more to say. I mean, all the other things are pretty much intact. Most of the psychos are left. I knew there was something I've forgotten. There's the one psycho that I love, which I wanted to talk about, is I saw this in the concept art, because there's concept art in the game if you if you look at the main menu, and one of them is for a clown on stilts, and I was like, another clown? And I almost missed it. I almost didn't have time to go for this clown and fight him, and then I got to this guy. He's an ice cream clown. He has an ice cream truck, and then it turns out his name is Evan, and he's after Frank for personal vendetta, because his brother is Adam, the chainsaw juggling clown from the first Dead Rising. And even though it's just this short little wink and nod to the original, I loved it. And he was also a pretty easy, not easy, overly easy, but he was probably, ironically, the best designed psychopath in the game who is not a boss you have to fight, the best optional one, because I knew how to beat him. He's pretty straightforward with how I'm supposed to beat him. It takes some time, but I have fun doing it. And it was just that kind of morbid Dead Rising 1 humor, which a lot of the psychos in Dead Rising 2 kind of tried to emulate, but failed to really capture. And I think that's it. Every single moment in this game that has been Frank Westified is better than the rest of the game, just because it has charm that Chuck Green left out. So that's all. Frank West is a fucking magic. He's a miracle worker. He could make anything better. Why do you think they added into Marvel vs. Capcom? Why am I going to buy Marvel vs. Capcom? Because I always wanted to have a team of Spider-Man, Phoenix Wright, and Frank West. But yeah, Frank West makes everything better. I just hope that Capcom takes note of this video and other videos, because it seems like everyone is agreeing on at least one point, and that is that Frank West is Dead Rising. Those two things are each other's equals. So yeah, that was my short video, which became a lot longer than I thought it would be. I'm tired and I'm ranting, but I think I got all I wanted to say out. I'm really excited for Batman tomorrow. Unfortunately, I'm not going to be able to play it a whole lot because I have work, and I'm going to go see Contagion after work, and then I work on Saturday. So Sunday will be my Batman day. Talk to you guys later.